I think you got it.
How you doing?
Good.
Why don't you introduce yourself in front of everybody today?
Okay, so welcome to Deep Dive Dialogues,
Mm-hmm.
where we're going to interview the interviewer. So my name is Tamara Brown, and I'm being interviewed by...
Jamis Latrell.
Okay,
This is a switch.
this is a switch.
Your viewers get to see who you are. Yeah.
Yeah.
Off the top, what would you say about yourself?
What would I say about myself?
How would you describe yourself in the phrase?
Creative.
Creative?
In a phrase or a word?
Yeah, well let's go with a word.
Yeah, I would say a creative.
Creative. Interesting. So you are a poet, you are an interviewer, a person who wants to tell us a little bit about Deep Dive and its purpose.
Deep Dive Dialogues?
Yes.
Okay. So the purpose of creating Deep Dive Dialogues, the podcast channel that I started, is to give others the opportunity to tell their story and to provoke an environment where we're able to have higher level conversations.
Wow. What inspired you to start
it? Essentially, I noticed that the conversations that were happening around me and conversations that I had with friends would start off at a basic level and then they would go deep. And so we're here in my grandfather's church. This is where I kind of started things out. As a kid, I used to get on stage and practice on this stage, just public speaking. And one of the quotes that he likes to say is that small minds discuss people, average minds discuss events, and great minds discuss ideas. So I noticed that during conversations with my friends, family, and just the conversations that happen around me, often they start off at a basic level and then they escalate to deeper ideas. And sometimes those ideas don't have the chance to be captured. So I wanted to cultivate a virtual environment to where people could, convey their thoughts on a deeper level and capture the moment for other people to learn from those conversations as well.
Wow, that's amazing. And you're giving everyone the opportunity to witness that.
Yeah.
Yeah. You are a poet.
I am. I do poetry.
You wouldn't consider yourself a poet?
I would say that I'm very poetic in the nature that I express myself. That is true.
What type of poems do you write?
I write all types of poetry. As I said, I chose to do this specific interview in this environment because the church is really special to me. So I used to come to this church to write poetry on any given subject at 8 years old.
Wow.
And so a poet that I really admire, he stated that we understand that we're truly writers when someone can give us a subject and we can write about it. When you can write about anything, then you've earned your title as a writer. So at 8 years old, people from the church, people from my father's store, they used to give me subjects and I would write about it and put them in a binder and then sell the poems for 25 cents.
Wow.
At my father's store. I would make copies of the same poem. And if it was Valentine's Day and people wanted to have a poem to give to their significant other, they would come up to my father's store, look through the binder, and then, I would give them a poem to, satisfy, whatever was taking place for that day. So to answer your question, I can write about anything. I often choose to write about things that are very personal to me.
Wow. I like that story. So you were a little hallmark, human hallmark. Yeah. That's hot.
I've never heard it conveyed that way, but I would say that that's accurate.
Wow. But at your age now, you've hit stages.
I have.
How does that feel?
To hit stages?
And present your poetry.
I would say I feel most comfortable on stage, believe it or not.
Okay.
I feel comfortable on stage. I like sharing my thoughts and feelings with the masses, I would say. So I don't view it as as an accomplishment, more so as a privilege to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And an environment that's very nostalgic for me.
Yeah.
And I like being on stage.
The stage is an intimate place.
It is, but the world is also my stage. I say that.
Yeah. Oh,
Because
okay.
I've performed in parking lots. I can make the parking lot my
Wow.
stage. I've performed in Walmart for 1 or 2 people and Waffle Houses. And so I think the stage is where we make it.
Right.
But the act of physically being on a stage like we are right now, it feels comfortable to me.
Deep. Deep dive. The topic of love came up. I guess we'll just expound just lastly on this, on poetry. When it comes to poems about love, where does it come from you, for you? I know you mentioned that it's all personal, your experiences, but
Right.
yeah.
I would say that my poetry on love is more about love lessons that I've learned from heartbreak or infatuation. I think that love is a topic when it comes to poetry that I've always been a little apprehensive to touch on, because it's a part that's very personal to me. It makes me feel vulnerable. But I have challenged myself poetically to share those parts of myself with other people as well. Yeah.
You do it well. I'm definitely a witness to some of the things. I really appreciate your artistry. Yeah. You are in the Navy.
I am.
And you've been there for how long?
12 years.
12 years. Was that your own conscious decision? I'm just going to go to the Navy, or was someone else you knew that were in it? What's inspired you to go there?
Looking back on my journey in the United States Navy, I would say that my mother definitely inspired the idea for me to go to the military. At one point, she told me that was what I was going to do. But I had gone to Spain at age 15. So to me, my first version of boot camp was the language training that I attended in Spain, well before I even thought of going to the military. I attended a program that was through Indiana University, and I had to go to Spain for 8 weeks with zero contact with my family, or minimal contact, and study Spanish extensively. So that was my first experience being away from home.
Wow.
So after I came back, my mother, she encouraged me to continue to pursue linguistics and learning languages. And she saw that there was an opportunity that existed for that in the Navy. So I originally joined to be a linguist. I didn't get that job right off. I got a job as a signal analyst, but eventually I was able to work my way up to becoming a linguist later on in my career.
Oh, great.
So to precisely answer your question, my mother inspired my journey of becoming a linguist in the United States Navy. It wasn't an easy journey, but I made it there.
Wow. So that's the beginning, the origin of the teacher, somewhat, as far as learning the Spanish and kind of.
Yeah, so I would say the beginning origin of teaching began in high school.
Okay.
Because after I got back from Spain, I used to work at a McDonald's. And at the McDonald's, some of my coworkers did not speak English. And so I used to meet them at the library and give them English lessons for $15 an hour.
Jeez.
And so in high school, I essentially had 2 jobs. One is, a worker at McDonald's, and then another one part-time tutoring ESL.
Real quick, back in Spain, how old were you?
15.
15, and how many years or how long did you, as far as learning Spanish, from 15 years?
So I started learning Spanish when I was 13.
13.
Yeah, when I was 13 years old, I started learning Spanish. Then after my family saw how well I did in Spanish, they encouraged me to study abroad.
Okay.
Initially, I was kind of arrogant, I would say. I was like, I can study it without having to go to another country and speak it fluently.
Right.
But I would definitely say that a big leap in my learning process was from the experience of traveling abroad and studying with Indiana University through that program.
Wow. And yeah, that's interesting because in order to become a teacher, just the ideal of where your training came from. So to start that young is, I mean, the world, anything's possible. 13, and so you felt like you didn't even need to go, but with you now, hindsight,
Yeah,
you feel like it
I'm
was a good
definitely,
move.
yeah,
Yeah,
because what you can't learn from studying on your own is the culture,
yeah,
the cultural aspects that exist within being inside of the environment.
right,
Where, another country, you learn the food, you learn the culture, the mannerisms, and then getting to know the people that have real stories.
right.
And being able to understand that in Spanish, that I would say that was a huge elevation in my education and in my consciousness, just when it came to understanding people and how the world works. It definitely had me adapt my worldview.
Wow. So the teaching that you did at McDonald's, and that started the whole thing. Was that the point that, okay, I can make some money in this and make a living and move
I
to the...
I still would say at that point I was doing it out of the desire to help other people convey their stories. There were a lot of stories that I learned from my students
Right.
that I was teaching, from the McDonald's where I worked at. So I knew that I could make money off of it, but it was more so about doing something I was passionate about. Like McDonald's was a job and teaching was my passion.
Right.
Yeah.
And you found it. You found that passion there.
Correct.
You say, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say so.
That's crazy. So let's get back a little bit back to the deep dive.
Okay.
And where the Spanish kind of, is it a kind of a blend in the even though the deep dive is about different topics, you utilize Spanish with the deep dive.
Are you referring to the first interview that I did?
Right.
So, are you asking how I implement Spanish into deep dive dialogues?
Yeah, let's go with that. You're such a good interviewer. I'm taking pictures.
Yeah, so I would say that the interview that I did with Ricky, that was the first interview that was posted. I want to give an opportunity for both English and Spanish speakers to be able to participate in the community that I'm cultivating called Deep Dive Dialogues.
Okay.
So the interview with Ricky, I was really excited to do that because he's a very well-known YouTuber, and a lot of my students have voiced to me that they've come as far as they've come in learning Spanish because of videos that he's created. He has a huge reputation online, especially on YouTube, for contributing to the Spanish learning community. And I think something that you don't see is African Americans speaking Spanish, or Americans in general, I would say, knowing more than just English. So I wanted to be able to depict and also to provide an environment that he could show his progress and his accomplishments in linguistics in order to inspire others and let them know that they can do the same. And some of my students have said that when they saw Ricky for the first time, they realized that, it's possible for an African American to learn more than one language. And I think that's important for us to display.
Right. What do you got planned for the future for Deep Dive?
My goal is to have a mix of your average everyday person, conveying their personal experience with deep concepts, also to depict uncommon experiences, so people who may do rare jobs that we never heard of, because I think sometimes we can box ourselves in to we can only do these certain things in order to obtain success in life. So I want Deep Dive Dialogues to kind of allow people to tell their stories, provide deep lessons, and then also depict some experiences that lead to success that may not be as common as what we're used to seeing. And so the plans I have for the future is to have some very interesting guests
Wow.
come on to talk about their pathway to success, because it looks different for everyone.
Right.
Right.
People say when you start projects, you get amped up. Would you say all the interviews that you've done so far, how does it make you feel now? Where are you? What do you see? You correct yourself. Do you think of it? Make you think of the aspects of it a little differently, and what to do next, and what to do different.
Yeah. So I would say that I get amped up with each interview that I do.
Mm-hmm.
I am amped up with the project, but I'm also a perfectionist. So I see little things at each interview that I'm like, okay, I could do this better. Even with the editing process, you've been present for that. Like it's all a learning process, but I also think that it exemplifies the deep concept of progress not being linear.
Right.
So I see where I'm like, I did really good here, but then maybe I took a few steps back here. But then I keep taking steps forward here. And I think that's a good analogy of how life is. That the journey of life looks a lot like my project Deep Dive Dialogues.
Wow. That's good.
Mm-hmm.
Let me ask you this. What would you want people to take away when they think of Tamara Brown and they're in connection with you as a Spanish teacher in Deep Dive? If someone was to ask someone off the street, Tamara Brown, what is the takeaway? What is the thing you want to be embedded in their mind about you and your projects?
I think the endeavors that I pursue are many, as we can see. The endeavors that I pursue are many. But the intention behind it all is to connect people and allow them the platform to be heard and to tell their story.
Right.
So if they could remember one thing when it comes to me, is my intention to connect people, show them kindness, and allow them a space to where they can tell their story.
Okay. Here I am jumping back. I believe people who they are who they are based on their upbringing. You grew up kind of in this church.
Okay.
Right. Okay. So you saw your grandfather in front of people, and you've said he's an influencer himself.
Correct.
So how would you say that influenced you, or what did you take from just having this experience of having family members that owns a church?
So if you talk to my grandfather, he will say that this church is not his, it's God's.
Okay.
But I would say, if I'm starting from the lessons that I learned from the church, so I'll go from what I've learned from the church, what I've learned from my family, and then what I've learned from my grandfather in particular. So what I've learned from the church is the concept of community. And I was raised by a lot of people in this church. So while my grandfather was off doing his ministry, my parents were working, there are a lot of people who stepped forward and babysat my siblings and I. Sister Phyllis in this church, I always talk about how she pierced my ears at 2 weeks old. The church gave us a platform to be creative, writing poems in the back room. There were, Sister Carol, Brother Bruton, they all encouraged me to pursue those things. Even practicing on this stage when I was younger, everyone in this church always made me feel that there wasn't anything that I could not do in life and have success.
Wow.
So when I think of this church, I think of, the sense of community, encouragement, just complete nostalgia. Like for me, this is a place where I've always felt safe. Like it's coming back home to a community that genuinely loves you and produces like an indescribable amount of kindness that's genuine, right?
Right.
And so that's what I think of when it comes to the church, the members in it, and how completing the vision that my grandfather initially had would not have been possible without the members of the church. And that it truly is a village. When they say, who raised you? I say a village.
Exactly. Wow.
A village. And so that's what I think of when it comes to the church. When it comes to my family, I would say that my family is extremely talented, and they also have provided the space for me to be myself. And that's extremely important in the endeavors that I pursue in life, whether it had been sports or poetry or teaching. Just having that space where you don't feel judged. My uncles, my aunts, my cousins, we all support each other in our different endeavors. And then when it comes from my grandpa, my grandpa, I would say the biggest quality is his humility. That throughout all of his success, I think earlier I was telling you, like, I look around and think, like, how was all of this created, down to the artwork or just him pulling together communities, and he's been so humble about it. And the members describe him as having like a quiet spirit, and I would agree with that. And I can be a little egotistical sometimes and a little audacious, and I'm way more extroverted than my grandfather, but his example reminds me to not forget where I come from and to be kind to others, and to also stand on my morals and values even when it's hard. And so sometimes I've done that. Sometimes it's been a little difficult, but his example has reminded me that it's possible. So.
Okay. Wow. That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm almost out of ideals here, man. Well, I like to say, I've got one of my questions. Are you a romantic?
Oh, am I a romantic? Am I a romantic? I would say I'm a romantic.
Okay.
For the people that inspire romanticism within me.
Right.
Mm-hmm. I like romantic music. I love old school R&B.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen your videos. You're tough too, in a sense.
What makes you say that?
Well, let's say, yeah. Well, you seem where you play basketball.
Okay.
You look like you're very well. I'll say this: when I see you handle a ball, I'm like, she knows what she's doing. I can tell. You can it's the rhythm.
So there's a funny story about that. My father's store is across the street from the church where we are, and I used to go to work with my father after school.
Yeah.
And my basketball coach, we called him OG, Old Grandpa. That's what it stood for. His name was Dale. That was his real name. And he used to come up to the store and bring a basketball and show me how to go between my legs. And I would stand in front of the store for hours and just practice putting the ball between my legs until I was tired enough to go to sleep. And so, so the ball handling is like riding a bike. I learned that when I was like 8 or 9 years old. Everyone here thought I was going to go to like the NBA, be the first woman in the NBA. Wow. But now I play basketball more so to connect with other people for team building purposes and just to have a good time. To
exercise,
keep I have exercise. I have a very competitive spirit.
I'm gonna have to challenge you one of these days.
And you'll have to lose one of these days.
Man, let's see what's gonna happen.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you want your listeners to know? Because I'm out of questions.
Anything I would like them to know?
Yeah.
Check out Jamiz's music. That they should check out your music.
Right.
I think that if you're doing a deep dive dialogue interview, then maybe we should end with like a deep quote. Give
us a quote. And are you making this quote off the top of your head?
Yeah.
Okay, let's get it.
No one can define your intrinsic value because it's God-given.
Deep. You went deep. Wow, that's good. Mm-hmm. Is that the end of our interview?
I don't know, interviewer. You're taking my spot today.
Well, this is my first time in a long time doing any type of interviewing, so
you're investigating the investigator.
Yeah, well, I hope I did a good job.
I think you did a pretty good job.
Already. I think it's important that the people know who you are, and we look forward to seeing more of you.
All right, I appreciate it, Jamiz.
Absolutely.
Thanks for having me.
Peace.